Dear colleagues and dear friends, a very, very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending, of course, on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us from all various parts of the world to participate in this truly, truly exciting dialogue on social transformations through men's caregiving in the Arab States region. I personally am very pleased to see such a diverse group of stakeholders, of which I know will be an enriching exchange as we share each other's experiences and expertise and mutually reflect on approaches on how to engage with men and boys as agents for change for gender equality. At the onset, I express my gratitude to civil society partners for accepting this invitation to speak at today's panel. Thank you, Emi from Egypt. Thank you, Hassan from Lebanon. Thank you, Carine from Morocco. And thank you, Azhar from Palestine. Furthermore, I thank our partners from MenEngage and all my UN Women colleagues, of course, involved in the preparations for this very session. It's a great honor for the UN Women Regional Office for the Arab States to take part in the Ubuntu Symposium. The panel today is not the only event, of course, organized by UN Women at this key global platform to promote the engagement of men and boys for gender equality. But it is the only one so far with a specific focus on the Arab region. This morning, for example, I myself attended a high-level event on ending violence against women with the League of Arab States. And our discussion reflected on how 2020 was supposed to be the year of celebration, in a sense, the year of scaling up in terms of gender equality, in the year of accelerating. Instead, we all collectively had to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, and it turned, in many ways, our lives upside down. And the different measures that governments all around the world have taken to, in a way, hamper the pandemic, such as lockdowns, had a number of effects that we are painfully aware of, such as economic struggles, but also struggles in relation to livelihoods. But one of the very troubling facts, evidence that we have noticed during the last couple of months is the very same place that should have been a safe haven for many women and girls have been the place where she is most exposed, her home. Now, we know, of course, that violence against women and girls is widespread throughout the world, but the Arab States, regretfully, is no exception. The WHO estimates that around 1/3 of ever partnered women in the Eastern Mediterranean region have experienced physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner. This, my friends, is one of the highest rates compared with other regions. At the same time, the burden of unpaid care and domestic care on women has exponentially increased with the movement restrictions and lockdowns that are taking place in most countries. I want to share with you something which is that only, I think, 12 or 13 hours ago, our Deputy Executive Director, Anita Bhatia, and she was quoted amongst others media outlets in the BBC, saying that 25 years of progression and progressiveness in the area of gender equality can be eroded in one single year. The challenges we face today in working toward gender equality and empowerment of women, particularly also in our work towards ending violence against women, is a concern to all of us. Equally, everyone must be part of the solution. In today's world, both men and women, girls and boys are speaking up for women's rights and for those who have been silenced. And the UN Women Arab States have prioritized these issues, and a part of its response to implement the Because I Am a Man campaign to mobilize millions of Arab men to stand up and against violence against women and take their share in domestic wars. Now, 3 of these men are in my immediate proximity: my father, my husband, and my son. And I'm immensely happy that this campaign have attracted no less than 18 million people around the Arab states today. Friends and colleagues, We started a little bit late, so I don't want to dwell too long, of course. Just very quickly to say that our panel discussion today will be driven by evidence of the groundbreaking research conducted under the International Men and Gender Equality Survey, also known as IMAGES. And of course, as you all know, this has been conducted in close collaboration with Monde and local research partners, and generously funded by Sweden. The IMAGES research has been conducted, as you know, in Egypt, Lebanon, Morocco, and Palestine, and later IMAGES will also be rolled out in Kuwait, and currently we are conducting the research in Jordan and Tunisia. Now, once again, a big thank you for all of you joining us today, and welcome to you all. Without further delay, over to you, Rasha.
Let me unmute first. Thank you so much, Susan, for the inspiring words. And indeed, I mean, the Men and Women for Gender Equality program continues to strive for a gender transformative process in its 6 program countries, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, Palestine, and Tunisia. More details on the project, including more than 460 knowledge, products, and tools, will be found on the link that will be shared by my colleague Radwa. Now, if you may allow me, everybody, I'll just step back and share with you some of the key housekeeping notes, which you will also see on the screen now, just for the sake of translation needs and otherwise. So I'll just walk you through those, and then we can look at the agenda together and get started with our panel discussion. So on the key points, all participants, please, are kindly requested to be on mute and camera off throughout the discussion. Live interpretation is available in both Arabic and French. You can press the globe button and select your preferred interpretation language. For Arabic, can you see me? It just jumped off the screen for a moment. For Arabic, if you can press the Spanish button, you will also get the Arabic translation, so no need to worry there. You can just follow that link. The chat box function will serve the purpose of receiving your various questions and comments and remarks or technical assistance needs. If you type your question in the chat box throughout the discussions, if you can just be patient and enter your questions, they will be consolidated by my colleague Radwa, and we will address those in the assigned session to each of the speakers. Finally, as mentioned, all the knowledge, products, and details on the project can be found on the link to the program. Now, before that, I forgot to mention one important point, and that is to introduce myself. My name is Rasha Abulaz. I'm the program coordinator for the Men and Women for Gender Equality program based at UN Women Egypt country office. I have been very lucky to be part of the design and management of the program since its inception, so the program is very close to my heart. Now, for the rest of the 90-minute session we have before us, this will be split into 2 key segments or sessions, if you may. The first one will address some of our best practices or best examples on engaged fatherhood and parenting from the region. And the second session will be addressing the challenges and opportunities. We will be today honored to receive 4 speakers from 4 different countries across the region who will speak in both of the sessions on the topics mentioned. Now you can see as well the agenda as we walk through it together on the screen, as well as we have the question and answer session, and the wrap up will basically be the key lessons learned and policy recommendations, programming recommendations by our regional program director, regional program manager of the Men and Women for Gender Equality, Rodrigo Montero. And finally, Susan will be kind enough to give us her closing remarks once again to wrap up our panel discussion. So moving on, if I may begin the first session on good examples from across the region. I'm pleased to begin with our panelist from Egypt, Yanni. Emi is a project manager from Care International, who are implementing the community grants component of the program in Egypt. She holds a master's degree in international cooperation and humanitarian aid, and has more than 10 years of experience in international development program management. Emi has ranged working on women empowerment. Her range of work includes women economic empowerment, GBV, as well as working with girls empowerment. She has worked with a wide range of organizations and partners as well, from UN organizations to local development institutions and government organizations, and has vast experience with hands-on projects, including ours, the Men and Women for Gender Equality, funded by Swedish government, SIDA, and the Safe Cities Free from Violence Against Women and Girls, as well as the Ending Violence Against Women, the EVAL program. Welcome, Emi.
Thank you.
Thank you for unmuting so that I can begin with my first question. Emi, based on the images research in Egypt, around half of the male and female respondents were in favor of paid paternity leave. Up to 2 weeks even. They've been advocating for that, and that's something obviously we're very keen on supporting. However, we know the fact is that Egyptian women continue to take the largest share and carry the largest burden as it pertains to unpaid care and domestic work. Can you highlight for me or share with us some of the strategies and the tools that CARE, through the program, has been using in Egypt to promote men's engagement and men's increased responsibilities in caregiving and domestic work, and men's broader engagement, so to speak, from a gender equality perspective? Thank you.
Thank you, Rasha, and hello, everybody. Building on what was just mentioned in regards to the findings from the images survey and all the stats that have been mentioned, I would like to brief you quickly on CARE's gender equality framework, which basically entails working on 3 domains: women agency, relations, and structure, which through the focus on agency, women's self-esteem and confidence are built, and women have increased financial independence to fulfill their potential as productive and income earning members for their households and the society in general. In addition, when power relations, tackling all forms of gender-based violence within and outside the household, and when structures such as social norms or laws, discriminatory behaviors, harmful practices, all of that, particularly in the area of person status, domestic violence, are reformed, passed, and implemented, gender equality can be achieved. So in order to tackle the second and third domains, relations and structures, which I have just mentioned, we need to work with different actors and community segments, of which we believe engagement of men and boys, women and girls is essential and can leverage the transformative impact. That's why I would like to shed the light on 2 of the innovative models that we have been using that has been developed by CARE Egypt and used as the basis for interventions aligned with CARE's gender equality framework that I just mentioned. So the first one is responding to previously mentioned findings, enforcing a thrived transformative impact. It synchronizes activities targeting male and female groups, where we target different segments of the community, again, talking about men, boys, women, and girls, for the aim of achieving positive enabling environment for gender equity in rural and low-income communities, where our targets are found. That's where we go and target the beneficiaries. I want to highlight that the model is created based on previous preparations, testing and development, and implementation of 2 toolkits. One for engaging men aged from 19 to 45 years, and the second for engaging boys between the age of 10 and 18. During the community grants implementation of Men and Women for Gender Equality, we have managed to adapt the manuals to be more receptive and impactful by the targeted audience, which included conveying the manuals the manual messages and sessions through sport days, songs, theater, and other interactive engaging tools. So let me give you a brief idea about the first model I'm talking about, which is the engaging men and boys for adults. And I would like to call it a journey of 12 sessions, where the group of men and boys meet on weekly basis. There are 4 main parts of that manual. The first one tackles the roots and the formation, the upbringing of men. And in that part, we discuss the psychological needs, abuses and violations, self-image, identity, and roots of violence. The second part talks about inherited concepts, such as concept of authority, responsibility, love, masculinity, and femininity. The third part is where we directly tackle the violence and its impact. So we discuss and talk about violence and its types, discrimination, impact of violence on men, and of course, the impact of violence on women. The fourth one, which I can call it the wrap-up of the journey, we call it how to deal with violence. And under that part, we discuss with men the renewal of the thought, expressing the feelings, empathy, safe boundaries, self-care, and more importantly, my role and my message. And the last thing that's one of the most important parts is stepping out and their commitment. And this is when we reassure men and boys of the importance of becoming champions of change and advocate for gender equality. And again, this is where we believe transformation takes place. And quickly, I'll tackle the second toolkit that has been recently developed again by Care Egypt. It's on fatherhood and positive parenting. It aims at raising parental awareness in regards to the concept of positive parenting, including equal division of domestic work, promoting gender equality, improving men's self-confidence and their effectiveness in providing for their families, and improving family relations by fighting violence towards wives and children. Here, where the impact and transformation is achieved in the private and public spheres. What we have encountered that not only parents, specifically father, would witness an attitude and behavior change, but also their children who will grow up witnessing different role models from those the community and social norms enforce. This is in a nutshell how we tackle the previously mentioned findings from image study. And yeah, that's just a quick idea about these toolkits, and maybe I can talk about more how we're using it and the more opportunities later on in the second session. Thank you, and over to Rasha.
Thank you so much, Emmy, and very interesting and very enriching, actually, set of tools. And thank you for sticking to the time. I forgot to mention that also to all the speakers. It will be 7 minutes, and I will be very strict. So I'm hoping everyone can stick to the time. It's quite interesting that we will hear more of that on the cycle of care and the cycle of violence later on, also from Morocco during the discussion. So I'm happy that you raised that. I'm going to move now to our next speaker, Hassan Jomah from Lebanon. And welcome, Hassan, and hope everyone is safe and sound in Beirut. I'll give a quick background on Hassan, who's a senior program officer on masculinities from Abaid, Resource Center for Gender Equality in Lebanon, which I know many of you are familiar with. Hassan coordinates several projects in Abaid and has been working on with multiple groups on issues of masculinities. He is also a facilitator on masculinities and has delivered workshops and TOTs for several local and international organizations in the past years in Lebanon and the MENA region. Since joining Abaid, he was one of the main trainers in the piloting and implementing of masculinities trainings, such as Program Ra, and others on engaging youth on masculinities and on working with childhood development. Hassan has also academically a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences and has finished his master's degree in healthcare management and quality technology. Welcome, Hassan.
Thank you.
Now, my question to you, Hassan, again, based on the research and based on the piloting of Program P, which has been conducted in Lebanon last year and is now being rolled out and institutionalized. According to the piloting process of the Program P toolkit in Lebanon, the gender transformative approach that was conducted and the improvements in terms of respectful relationships amongst couples, for example, who participated in the pilot. Can you elaborate for us some of the good examples and results achieved that you have witnessed in that dynamic in particular?
Yes. Thank you, Rasha, and welcome everyone. So basically, the masculinities work that is being done in Abad is under the umbrella of ending violence against women, as also previously shared by Amy. So Program Up is a program that was validated to the Lebanese context with a collaborative work with our partners and under the Fund of Prevention Plus and UN Women. So basically, it uses a gender transformative approach to engage men in the active fatherhood, meaning that it seeks to challenge and transform the harmful notions of masculinities associated with fatherhood. So we found out that there is a big gap on fatherhood and positive parenting and how gender roles are being taken from one generation to another. The manual is developed how it is validated to the Lebanese context. It is divided into three main parts. So the first part focused on the masculinities concepts in general, how fathers are raised, how was the relationship between them and their fathers before, and how they are taking this into their children. The second part also focused on the relationship between men and women. In regard to that, I mentioned the communication between couples, how setting goals toward children. And then the last part, we focused on the positive parenting, including discipline techniques, praising techniques that are healthy and positive ways of dealing with them. So this is the program in general. So what I am going to share with you now are some of the pilot implementations of the program when we tried it with 315 couples in different regions across Lebanon. So first of all, I will start with the attitudes on violence. We saw that there is a big change in the attitude around the justification of violence. So usually they say that the man should be tough, a woman deserves to be beaten, for example, or violence within the family is a private matter and should not be shared with others. And interestingly, before the intervention, women had more inequitable views about the accessibility of violence, acceptability of violence against women than the men. Can we move on, please? Okay, so and then the attitudes on gender roles. Also, we saw a slight change when it comes to gender roles, specifically here about the care task and the decision taking inside the household. So it is also improved. Here we mentioned, for example, changing diapers, giving birth to children. Also, we tackled the decision taking here and the important role of women in care inside the household. Can you move, please? Okay, and the attitudes on masculinity is always there is a misconception on what it means to be a man. Man should use violence in order to take respect in his family, and fathering a male will put the father as a place that he is a real man. So also these attitudes changed over the implementation of the project. Please. Okay, I will try to raise my voice. Can we move forward, please? Okay, when it comes to the couple communication, we found out that on the field there's a lot of couples that did not have a communication between each other. Also, always the man has a big level inside his household, and he just give like, you have to do this, go and do this. So they were not like sharing of in so even when we speak about worries and feelings, it changed over the implementation. Can we move, please? Parenting attitude and practices also. Expressing encouragement or praising the child in a positive way when he deserved or she deserved. And I think punishing a child physically when he deserves it will make him more responsible and mature adult. These were observed also reductions when it comes also to child physical punishment, and also to how to deal with children when they do something right and when they do something wrong. Also, going to the division of household tasks, we found out that men are more equipped now, and more partnership between men and women started to occur. And this is from different evidences from the ground. So after, for example, one of the implementations in the north, females and males offered to prepare food for their couples and invite their children to finish the program, and etc. So also the household tasks showed a big change and a big improvement over the program. Thank you, and over to you, Rasha.
Thank you so much. Am I unmuted? No, okay, correct. Thank you, Hassan, very much. Very interesting, and we hope when COVID willing and safety willing and everything, that we come and visit. And I think it would be a very useful exchange to bring even the partners from the various countries to really look at the model being adopted in Lebanon. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now we will move with our next speaker, Carine Troussel. And I'm excited to hear about the Moroccan experience, actually. And Carine, we understand your intervention will be in French. So everyone, if you would like, while I introduce Carine, to access your translation feature, please go ahead and do so. Carine is based in Rabat, Morocco, where she works as coordinator of Quartiers du Monde. She worked in several NGOs in Morocco and in the coordination of Latin American, African, European network on the empowerment of women, citizen participation, youth, and social economy and solidarity. Carine has been involved with the animation of youth groups in working class neighborhoods, the construction and animation of training courses based on participatory approaches, integrating gender, and she also coordinates the local projects within international networks. Welcome, Carine.
Merci. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Okay. I will ask my question in English. Excuse my limited knowledge of French. Carine, according to Image's research in Morocco, once again, and we know that it's in Rabat, in a particular area where the research was held, 72% of men and 54% of women expressed that it was the role of the mother to cater to the needs of the newborn, so feeding and cleaning, etc. Very classical sort of perception. Can you expand or explain to us a little bit, share some of the experiences on the tools developed by your organization to change these mindsets and practices? And I know that they've been non-conventional ones, quite creative, if we may. That's the first part of my question. And my second part is that we see also in the research, as Hassan also mentioned in Lebanon, as we witness as well in Egypt and across the Arab region and many other countries, that the concept of a real man, actually, as reflected by 62% of men, and 57% of women, express that toughness. I don't know why I have an echo now. That toughness is what defines a man. And what it means to be a man is to really have that sort of quality. My question to you is, have you met the 38%? And what do you do to engage with them? What have you been actively involved with in engaging those 38%? Thank you.
Merci Racha. Il y a un écho, c'est bon. Merci d'accueillir Quartiers du Monde dans ce panel. Je suis très honorée de partager l'espace avec Amy, Hassan et Azhar. En introduction, peut-être rapidement vous dire que Quartiers du Monde a commencé à travailler avec les hommes sur les masculinités à la demande des femmes avec lesquelles nous travaillons dans les collectifs qui sont accompagnés dans des processus d'empowerment vers l'autonomisation socio-économique, qui identifiaient les hommes comme des freins à leur processus d'émancipation à différents moments et parfois comme auteurs de violence, et on s'en retournés vers les facilitatrices, vers le réseau, pour pouvoir travailler, négocier avec les hommes pour qu'ils puissent laisser aller le processus d'empowerment et pouvoir s'impliquer dans les tâches à l'intérieur de la maison pour permettre aussi aux femmes d'avoir accès à d'autres espaces. Donc, c'est comme ça qu'on en est venu à travailler sur les masculinités. Et en termes de démarche et d'outils, pour répondre à ta question, Racha, on utilise des outils et des méthodologies issues de l'éducation populaire dans une perspective... Oh là là, depuis combien de temps mon son est coupé? Donc, on utilise pour cela des outils issus de l'éducation populaire avec une perspective féministe intersectionnelle.
Sorry, pardon, Carine, we're having a technical problem. If you will give us just less than a minute, we will try to project the material on the screen. Sorry to interrupt you. If
all right.
Everyone's patience for 1 minute.
I can share pictures in my screen if needed.
Okay, Carine will share it. Yes, please. If you can please do so, Carine, would really appreciate it until we fix the technical issue. Thank you.
Donc, je disais qu'on utilisait des outils de l'éducation populaire qui, en introduisant la perspective de genre, la perspective féministe, prennent un travail à partir des pratiques, des expériences des personnes, les analyses collectivement. On tient beaucoup au collectif qui permet d'avoir une vision de différents angles d'attaque. Si j'ai cette bouteille et que moi je la regarde, je vais voir une étiquette, mais une personne au-dessus va voir le bouchon et avec différents regards, on va pouvoir bien mieux comprendre la bouteille qui est notre situation. Et donc, à partir de ça, produire du savoir collectif, valoriser le savoir populaire au même titre que le savoir de l'académie, savoir qui est lié aux pratiques. Donc, on est experte de nos pratiques et de nos vies. À partir de là, identifier les discriminations, les problèmes et expérimenter avec notre corps des solutions. C'est le cas de la première photo que je vous ai partagée, qui est une image de théâtre forum dans lequel on met en scène une situation qui est présentée par un des participants, une des participantes, et on va collectivement identifier le problème et proposer des solutions à notre partie avec les acteurs qui sont présents dans la salle. On va aussi créer d'autres outils de l'éducation populaire comme cette ligne de pouvoir où on va distribuer aux différentes personnes dans la salle des rôles qui sera un homme de 38 ans qui est cireur de chaussures dans la rue, une femme de 45 ans, ministre, etc. Et on va identifier quel est le pouvoir que détient cette personne-là, quelles sont les situations de discrimination qu'ils peuvent vivre et partager comme ça une perspective intersectionnelle. Un exemple d'outil qu'on a eu la chance de créer, c'est le jeu Nlabwa Moussawat, qui est un jeu qui visibilise le rôle des femmes marocaines dans l'histoire. Et on a produit une 50aine de cartes qui montrent des femmes dans différents secteurs politiques, artistiques, économiques. Et également, on a intégré quelques hommes alliés qui ont œuvré pour l'égalité de genre et pour les droits des femmes. On a par exemple cette personne-là qui est Ahmed Khemlichi. Et donc, l'idée du jeu, c'est de montrer l'illustration aux joueurs, de lire la petite description qui est en bas de l'image, et les personnes doivent deviner qui est ce personnage, et ensuite recevront plus d'informations par rapport au parcours, et on pourra questionner les discours, les actions, les comportements de ces hommes. Pourquoi est-ce qu'ils ont eu la chance de côtoyer ces 57 femmes importantes pour l'histoire du Maroc dans le jeu, quel est leur comportement dans l'espace privé, questionner ainsi les masculinités. Ensuite, on ira le mettre en lien avec nos vies quotidiennes, je vous l'ai dit au début, on accompagne des processus, on n'est pas sur des ateliers sur des durées courtes, mais plutôt sur des processus. Et on va mettre en lien avec nous-mêmes, les hommes et les femmes de notre entourage. On aura des cartes défis qui nous permettront de dire quelles sont les femmes de notre entourage qui pourraient intégrer ce jeu et pourquoi, quels sont les hommes de notre entourage qui pourraient intégrer le jeu et pourquoi. On a partagé ce jeu dans différents espaces, dans des écoles, avec des élèves, avec des enseignants, avec des parents d'élèves, avec des familles. Et puis ensuite, on l'atterrit avec des exercices pratiques. On a fait par exemple des analyses de jeux, les jeux qu'on utilise avec les enfants. Pourquoi est-ce qu'on encourage les jeux de reproduction pour les filles, les jeux de cuisine, les jeux de poupées, et pourquoi on encourage les jeux de réflexion, les jeux de bagarre pour les garçons. Et on a eu un exemple magnifique que vous pouvez voir là sur la photo, où on a fait un atelier avec des élèves, des enfants, et on avait posé sur le sol toutes sortes de jeux. Et on a demandé aux enfants de choisir les jeux avec lesquels ils avaient envie de jouer et puis de passer un moment à jouer. Et donc, les groupes se sont rapidement formés. Un groupe a joué aux échecs, un groupe a pris les Legos et a commencé à construire des choses. Et un petit garçon que vous voyez au milieu de la photo est resté au milieu, a pris une poupée et a commencé à l'habiller, à s'occuper d'elle. Et les autres le regardaient un peu comme ça en coin. Trouvé un peu étrange, mais lui était bien, il était à l'aise. Et à la fin de cette session, on a fait une petite analyse ensemble avec les différents participants. Et ce petit garçon nous a expliqué qu'il avait choisi cette poupée parce qu'il faisait ça beaucoup chez lui, parce que son papa lui avait rapidement mis des poupées entre les mains en lui expliquant que c'était un jour, il était peut-être destiné à être père et qu'il fallait qu'il apprenne à s'occuper de son enfant. Et donc, ça va aussi dans le sens des résultats de l'enquête image qui disait que les personnes qui ont été confrontées à des comportements égalitaires de la part de leurs parents avaient plus de possibilités ensuite d'avoir des comportements égalitaires. Je ne sais plus quel est le temps qu'il me reste avec les problèmes techniques qu'on a eus. Je voulais juste vous partager rapidement une autre méthodologie qu'on utilise qui est l'inverse des rôles, où on va, de manière à rendre visibles les discriminations et les inégalités qui sont d'habitude vécues par les femmes, on va inverser les rôles de manière à le rendre visible, parce que quand ils sont vécus par les hommes, c'est tout de suite plus intriguant et donc ça les visibilise. Et donc, un exemple, c'est une pièce de théâtre qui a été réalisée par nos partenaires du théâtre Aquarium sur la base d'ateliers qu'on a réalisés avec des parents, des pères, des mères, des enfants, des acteurs associatifs. et qui ont comme ça écrit avec humour une pièce qui décrit le parcours d'un homme enceint depuis le moment où il apprend sa grossesse jusqu'à son accouchement, les contacts avec les médecins, etc. Et ensuite, on va aller questionner dans les débats qui suivent comment les personnes se sont senties en voyant cette pièce, qu'est-ce qui les a intriguées, comment ça leur rappelle leur pratique et quelles sont leurs réflexions pour la suite et leurs engagements. Et on a eu de beaux témoignages de personnes qui disaient que ça leur permettait de remettre en question les pratiques, de voir autrement les pratiques inégalitaires qu'il pouvait y avoir à l'intérieur de leur famille. Et donc, on voit sur la dernière photo des hommes en train de préparer le repas, et parce que la pratique est importante aussi pour l'apprentissage. Merci de m'avoir donné cette opportunité.
Thank you so much, Carine. I was having a hard time asking you to stop because I'm very interested in all that you were presenting. I find it fascinating, the use of the non-conventional, out-of-the-box, very engaging, very interactive methodologies that you've been experimenting with in Morocco. And, from the board game to the theater to, it's just really been, one initiative after the next that's trying to break the ground around the topics that sometimes can be controversial. And I think, your tools as well cross-cut the different generations, which I find very interesting. They're very family-oriented. A young person can use it, a parent can use it. It's just, I find it very interesting. And I mean, we'll have an opportunity to discuss at length more on that. So thank you for your intervention. Okay, for the next speaker, last but certainly not least, we are joined by Azhar Besaiso from Palestine, and we're glad to have you with us today. Azhar, thank you. Azhar is Program Officer at the NGO Development Center in Palestine, and academically she holds a master's degree in human rights and democratization from the University of Malta. She has more than 15 years of experience working in NGOs and private sector in human rights, media, developmental issues, and capacity building. Currently, Azhar is working with the NGO Development Center on multiple development programs, including our very own UN Women regional program, Men and Women for Gender Equality. Welcome, Azhar. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be one of the panel members in this webinar.
We're honored to have you.
To answer your question, I'm gonna talk about the positive deviant approach as one of our most successful strategies that we use through our work.
We're looking forward to hearing about it, Azhar. If I may,
how it was successful with us. Let me brief you about what the approach is first. It's an approach to behavioral and social change that is based on observation. That is, in any community, there are people with uncommon but very successful behaviors and strategies that enable them to find better solutions to a problem more than their peers, despite they face the same challenges. In our work under the regional program, Men and Women for Gender Equality, which is supported by UN Women and Sweden, in the first phase, we looked carefully for male positive deviants, which were anti-early marriage, supported giving females their inheritance, and supported women political participation. In addition to supporting men sharing females, whether they were wives, mothers, sisters, at houseworks, and unpaid childcare. These men were men who practiced the norms that we want to disseminate in the community. Some of them were, maybe you may hear the name for the first time. We worked with Muhtars, who's a village or a neighborhood chef, or we call it community leader. We also worked with members of political factions and disabilities. We worked with decision makers. In the second phase, which is the current phase, we changed a little bit. We looked for male and female positive deviants. Both support means sharing household works and unpaid childcare. These positive deviants, which we always like to summarize the words and say BDs, they included married couples and university students. These BDs received capacity buildings at the very beginning to enable them to spread the norms in the correct way. The trainings included soft skills like communication and persuasion skills, and also on topics related to the norms that they want to disseminate, like masculinities, gender, etc., etc. If I want to talk why it was successful, I'm gonna mention the peer-to-peer approach that we used to support the positive deviant approach. Men worked with other men from their community, and they share the same background, they share the age, they share the same circumstances and challenges. The same was done with women peers and students. Why did we use this peer-to-peer approach? Because when a man or a woman or a couple are approached by another similar man, woman, couple who live the same circumstances and challenges, they will be more open to listen and feel the change is possible. Actually, it was very effective in terms of being faster, easier, and requires less effort in making the change in such a conservative society like the Palestinian society. Because when a man approached by a similar man, he would change. It would be easier for him to change in this community. I'm gonna tell you a story of a change of a man that we faced through our work. His name is Hassan Jomah. He's 32 years, and his wife Hamad Msabbeh, 29 years. They have been married for 10 years, and they received a house visit by a positive deviant named Muhammad Msabbeh and his wife Imam Qablan. He was arguing with the positive deviant that he was working a taxi driver at that time. I had no time to participate with his wife or take care of his children. It was his argument. I have no time. I'm a taxi driver. I rarely can rest and have my food and sleep. But here, the positive deviant and his wife helped him to make a plan to how to manage his time inside and outside his house. This plan was very effective. Later, when we followed up with them, we take the feedback of his wife. We found that she got happier. And the man said himself, "Oh my God, it is the first time I spent some time with my children. We are a happy family now." I'm gonna talk more about the elements of success of the positive deviance approach. After we finished the first phase, the term sustainability appeared. It was an element of success too. At two levels, at the level of the BDs, the positive deviants themselves, we found some BDs that they continue to influence and disseminate the norms voluntarily without being joined to any project related to us, because they are convinced with our norms. The second level, at the CBO itself, they started developing programs related to these norms and continued working and building on our programs. In this case, we have some PDs that they agreed to proceed and continue working with us. In brief, positive deviance peer-to-peer were one of our most successful approaches that we ever worked and used in our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Azhar. It was very interesting to hear about the experience. And we know it's quite distinct in Palestine in various ways, and sometimes striking ways as well. As I mentioned in the comments, I didn't get a chance to mention in the beginning, the numbers were quite interesting for Palestine from the images research. 81% of Palestinian men think that it is not shameful when men engage in caring for their children and for participating in domestic work, which is quite fascinating. So thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you for everyone. This is the end of the first session. We will be moving on to the next session. It's been a very enriching, well-rounded set of experiences and tools shared as well from across the region. And without a doubt, this was not an easy task. We witnessed it over the past few years in terms of the partnerships, in terms of trying to instigate change, in terms of gender transformations that are long-term processes, especially in the Arab region, and with entrenched gender roles, etc. I am very interested to hear, as I'm sure a lot of our audience is, some of these challenges and opportunities, in particular in terms of caregiving and positive parenting and in getting men more involved in the Arab region. So I'll make another quick round of questions, and I'll start with Amy again. And I'll ask you if you could touch upon some of the most pertinent factors. And I'm happy that Susan in the opening remarks talked quite a bit about COVID-19 and how we've all really had to deal with that sort of, natural disaster, if you may, on many fronts, and have had to be, introducing a lot of fast action, trying to really adapt to the circumstances without jeopardizing, to the extent possible, delivery of our, anticipated results and initiatives with our partners. And I know well that CARE has been very attentive to this in Egypt, and would like to hear from you on how you've leveraged the opportunity that men need to be, not as an option anymore, really, part of the solution, and need to take part in the care, shared care work and domestic work. Can you give us some of the highlights on maybe, the opportunities, some of the challenges that you've experienced and how you've overcome this? Thank you.
Thank you, Rasha. As you mentioned, the emerging of COVID-19 pandemic has caused tremendous disturbance in all communities, especially when all field interventions were subjected to certain restrictions. Field restrictions. This has led the program team and local organizations to come up with all possible innovative ideas and tools, not only to keep reaching out to targeted groups, but also to raise awareness on COVID-19 and mitigate all gender inequalities that are associated by the pandemic and the lockdown. Thus, we started to involve digitization of most of the available tools that I have previously highlighted. We have transformed positive parenting, engaging men and boys messages into short animated videos, songs, marionette theater, family games. We believe the impact of those engaging tools were a new opportunity and had largely impacted the reach out and also the level of family involvement. For example, videos were posted on social media, which involved some interaction between the viewers, but also the family itself. Other interventions included family games and activities of which families cooked together or sang a song together. And sometimes father and child filmed a video of a discussion on a certain software that one was one of the videos that was filmed between the father and child. The child started to ask the father about a certain software, and they were locked in, and they had to Google and find out. And they were very happy that they had this discussion. Let me read for you some of the quotes, and we have been hearing a lot of testimonies shared with us in regards to those tools and how they were quite reachable and impactful. They were all shared by mostly men and parents from different families that we worked closely with. So some of the quotes were, we should have done this a long time ago. And my kids were very happy, and they used to say that they wished I would always help their mother. Other parents said, I was really missing my son. It has been a while since I played with him. I needed to free some time to be able to spend time with my daughter. To be able to know my role, I needed to know who am I. I learned that in order for me to understand certain situations, I need to look for the root cause and understand it first. And to wrap up, I would like to conclude with a very short story. And I wish my colleague Radwa can share the photo. It's about Saeed, who's 14 years old and was involved in the Engaging Men and Boys sessions for youth. After that journey, as I described before, he kept reflecting on how to become a promoter and an advocate and what misconceptions he faced from his community. The first thing that came to his mind was a conversation he heard from adults around him talking about child marriage, and immediately he decided to gather his peers. And
sorry, Amy, to interrupt you.
Sure.
It will be shared in a second, unless you're quicker than us that you can share the photo. We will share it in 1 second. It's on its way now.
Okay. I think I did already. Can you see it?
It's on the screen.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, he after joining the Engaging Men and Boys journey, he started to reflect on how to become a promoter and advocate and what misconceptions he was facing around him from his community. The first thing that came to his mind was the conversation he heard from others talking about child marriage. And immediately he decided to gather his peers and bring his gangs, in another words. And he wrote a play on this issue on child marriage. And as they were part of the training on how to use marionette in awareness raising, they worked together on a theater show using marionette and did a street campaign talking about why we need to stop child marriage. So, the photo is for them. Can you see it? You have it? Okay. So the photo is when they were practicing that. And they went and did that street campaign, talking to the adults and convincing them using the marionettes. So that was one of the tools that we have been using. And as I mentioned, cooking together songs and plays and posting those tools on the social media has leveraged the reach during the pandemic. So I believe that opened a different opportunity during this hard time. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Amy. Once again, I think it's really one of the sort of niche approaches within the program is really how innovative it's been in really trying to move from research to action, really trying to communicate the findings of the research, trying to adapt to situations like COVID, but in a very non-conventional way. And I think that's part of that so much has been achieved in the duration of the program. And if you get the chance to look at the knowledge products that are available on the page, you will see quite an interesting set of tools and products that we've developed, and thank you for sharing that. So COVID in particular, I think will receive particular attention over the span of next year, that we try and take stock of, how have we adapted, how have we really overcome these challenges. So thank you for sharing that. I'll move now to Hassan. I know you've been waiting to continue the story for us, and it's quite interesting. Again, Abaid is very hands-on, we know well, in the work that you're doing on masculinities, in the work that you're doing on fatherhood and Program P and many others. And now you're at a stage where you're institutionalizing or in the dialogues with the Ministry of Social Affairs to try and institutionalize the manual, and which is where we are anticipated, all of us within the program and others that are developing tools, would really aspire to have it adopted and have that ownership and commitment by the government counterparts. And I'd like to hear from you, what have the challenges been in that respect, and where do you think the entry points can be for us to benefit from that process? Thank you, Hassan.
Okay, so to start with, Lebanon is full of challenges, to be honest. Starting first of all with the revolution that started last October. It aimed to postpone everything that we were planning to have. For example, we were having implementations on the program in various regions across Lebanon, but due to the revolution and due to several roadblocks, participants were afraid or were not able to join the sessions. So by some extensions, we were able to continue the implementations that were taking place. Also, after the revolution, the economic crisis started. So the economic crisis led to increase a lot the burden and the stressors that men are facing in our communities. So we were we were going to start developing tools and start implementing the tools that we developed on stress management, in order at least not to solve the stressors that they are facing, rather than deal with these stressors positively before starting program up. So we were starting with them how to use, how to deal with your stressors. Then we delved into as an entry point to start a parenting program with them. After the economic crisis, the corona outbreak and the lockdown that are existing in several countries across the world. So we were innovative in a way to start changing all the services that we are giving, and of course, whether it is case management, psychological individualized sessions for men online. It depends on the case. And also, but we didn't take the risk, to be honest, to change program up to be online, because first of all, due to the sensitivity of the topics and respecting the do no harm principle, in which usually in program up sessions we have many men and women in the same sessions, where they can share, where the facilitator is able usually to control the discussions and not to tell the discussion into a way where women can be subjected to violence, so that from a preventative measure to causing violence. So so we took the decision not to do an online version for the program, respecting the do no harm principle, and also because, and if it needs to be done, it needs a lot of validation, a lot of work, in order to know how to find the entry points, how to manage the discussions in a way where women are safe, and the life safety and women's safety usually comes first. We're trying our best, to be honest, to continue this work further, and hopefully we were going now to continue our the adopting of program up with the Ministry of Social Affairs. So it was a little bit postponed due to the crisis in the country. So now we're going to start, the Ministry of Social Affairs staff were trained to start doing this program up on the ground. So they will have a round of pilot implementations, and then after the adoption, program app will be disseminated across all the centers of Moza across Lebanon. Over to you, Rasha.
Okay. Yes, I can't say it's a very enviable situation the way things have been in Lebanon, but also not unfamiliar to the Lebanese people, and you know, you're fighters. You come back stronger than before. So we have a lot of faith in the people, as well as you know, the project activities that we are keeping an eye. It is a learning process for all of us. So yeah, best of luck with that, and thank you for sharing it with us. I'll move to Morocco once again, Carine, and I'm interested to hear about your work with young boys and young boys growing up to be fathers. In particular, the gender socialization, the upbringing process, etc., and also what they see, something that was mentioned earlier by Amy as well. And according to the research in Morocco, and this we see in various of the other countries as well, that what they grow up seeing as the behavior of the father is repeated. What they see as a child, they repeat as a parent once they are grown-ups. So in terms of those children who saw fathers caring for children or involved in house chores, or who were themselves involved along with their fathers, or witnessed that there were unequally distributed household chores with their sisters, for example, that all this was perpetuated or reproduced in their behavior as adults. Now, can you tell us in this respect in particular how you addressed this as a challenge or used it as an entry point or an opportunity to work with men and boys? Thank you, Carine.
Merci, Rasha. Alors, comme pour tous les autres participants de ce panel, les défis sont nombreux du travail avec les hommes et avec les pères. Et peut-être dans un premier temps, les mobiliser déjà. Les mobiliser pour faire partie des espaces, pour venir se questionner, pour ensuite pouvoir travailler sur l'identification des privilèges, des attentes de la société par rapport aux hommes. Selon les territoires, ça va être différent. Selon qu'on est à Ouarzazate dans le sud, à Salé ou à Ben Salah, dans les différentes villes du Maroc, les choses seront différentes selon l'âge, le statut social, selon qu'ils sont amazirs ou arabes. J'espère ne pas trop sortir du titre du panel, même si le panel est sur les pères arabes. On a quand même des populations amazirs au Maroc qui sont quand même bien représentatives. Je ferme la parenthèse. Et continuer donc le processus sur l'identification de l'impact du coût du patriarcat sur les hommes, sur les femmes, sur l'entourage, pour ensuite expérimenter le changement et par cela expérimenter l'expression des sentiments, le partage des tâches et des responsabilités. Un long processus qu'il faut suivre à partir des outils décrits plus haut. Un autre défi, et là je réponds peut-être à la question de tout à l'heure que tu posais, Racha, avez-vous rencontré les 38% qui pensent qu'il ne faut pas forcément être fort ou rude pour être un homme? Oui, on en a rencontré certains en tout cas. Et le défi va être de pouvoir les mobiliser et s'appuyer sur ces hommes alliés dans un premier temps pour faciliter les processus avec les jeunes, avec les hommes, puisqu'ils vont subir une très forte pression sociale du fait de travailler sur ces thématiques dans des organisations identifiées comme féministes. Je peux vous parler de l'expérience d'un collègue d'une organisation partenaire à Ouarzazate qui a commencé à faciliter un groupe d'hommes, et ses oncles, son entourage lui ont fait quotidiennement des remarques explicites et implicites de front violents ou subtils. Qu'est-ce que tu fais dans cette association qui fait divorcer les femmes? Tu n'as toujours pas un vrai travail, ta machine à gel, tu n'es pas un homme. En tout cas, différentes remarques qui, au quotidien, font que ça a été impossible pour lui de continuer dans ce processus. Et donc, le défi de mobiliser et de s'appuyer sur des hommes alliés dans ces conditions est compliqué, mais aussi des hommes alliés avec lesquels on voudrait travailler pour visibiliser, pour rendre visible le fait que les comportements égalitaires des hommes existent au Maroc, et pas seulement dans les grandes villes du Maroc, pas seulement à Casablanca, à Rabat, mais aussi dans d'autres territoires, que c'est pas une expérience qui vient de l'Occident, mais qu'elle existe dans les pratiques, même si on les voit pas, ou très peu, dans les médias. Le discours sur l'égalité femmes-hommes est plus ou moins audible, en tout cas il est accepté. Par contre, maintenant, le défi est de passer du discours à la pratique et d'assumer publiquement. On va vous partager un clip vidéo qu'on a eu l'occasion de réaliser pendant le confinement, justement, pour pouvoir continuer à échanger, à sensibiliser sur la nécessité du partage des tâches dans un moment où hommes et femmes se retrouvaient ensemble dans le foyer. On a réalisé une vidéo avec le rythme que vous entendrez, et on a sollicité des hommes pour partager avec le public des images de eux en train de réaliser les tâches domestiques, du care à l'intérieur de la maison. On a sollicité plus de 100 hommes qu'on connaissait pour leur pratique effectivement égalitaire, qu'on savait qu'ils réalisaient les tâches domestiques à l'intérieur de leur foyer, qu'ils étaient dans le partage des tâches et des responsabilités. Et sur ces 100 personnes qui faisaient partie de notre réseau, seulement 13 ont envoyé une vidéo pour dire combien le passage du discours à la pratique à assumer publiquement est compliqué. Je vais vous proposer maintenant de regarder les débuts du clip, qui est le grand saut entre l'éducation populaire dont j'ai parlé tout à l'heure et la production de contenu qui montre des hommes égalitaires. Radwa, quand tu veux pour le clip.
Can everybody hear? Is there sound? Because no, okay, we will restart it now. Sorry. Okay, there's no sound.
I think the person playing it will have to unmute also. So I think that's Russia.
Try to unmute.
Sorry for interfering. It's not about unmuting. Once we share.
Just unmute if you're muted yourself.
Actually, once you share the screen, there are two buttons that the person check. One is share computer sound.
No. You can hear it through yours now because I'm unmuted. It's fine. We will make sure to include the link also, so you can also watch the full video and listen to it.
Merci.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Merci pour le partage.
So we will. Carine, are you done with your intervention? Was this the last segment?
Juste un petit moment, si tu permets, pour terminer avec mon dernier défi, qui je pense est très important pour nous en tant qu'organisation qui travaillons sur le territoire, mais aussi pour nos partenaires, qui est de toujours garder en tête cet objectif d'empowerment des femmes, de ne pas survisibiliser les hommes qui déjà occupent l'espace public, l'espace médiatique, et donc avoir toujours en tête de contrebalancer une visibilisation des hommes, même si c'est dans le partage des tâches domestiques, avec des images de femmes qui ont eu une importance dans l'histoire, avec peut-être les illustrations des jeux, du jeu que j'ai pu vous montrer tout à l'heure, une grande artiste, chanteuse marocaine, Hassan Jomah, qui s'est engagée pour la dénonciation des injustices, de la colonisation, et ainsi de suite, d'autres femmes, pardon, qui ont beaucoup apporté et qui apportent beaucoup. Et puis dire que le Maroc est dans une conjoncture en ce moment favorable à l'implication des hommes au travail sur les masculinités, notamment parce que les partenaires financiers se positionnent sur cette thématique, et donc il y a des financements pour ces projets qui peuvent parfois pousser, ou en tout cas encourager certaines organisations à s'engager sur la thématique, et je crois qu'on doit avoir une attention toute particulière pour assurer que ces interventions se fassent dans une approche transformatrice des rapports de genre, qu'on a une responsabilité à produire des outils, à former, à questionner, à interpeller sur l'impact que peuvent avoir nos actions sur les femmes, à créer. Et voilà, j'ai terminé cette fois, Racha. Merci.
Thank you so much, Carine. One more time. Quite interesting, the whole journey you took us through from working in the villages with the men and the boys, and trying to work against the social pressure, the masculinity crisis that is experienced, I think, across the region and in many other parts of the world, and the long journey of this whole social transformation, or negative impacts of some of the social norms that we all experience in the Arab region. So thank you for mentioning that, and for sharing the interesting song as well with us. The visuals are always very important, are far-reaching, very accessible by a multitude of audience, and it's quite catchy and quite interesting to see. And I appreciate very much the two comments you raised in the end, and I hope you can leverage in Morocco, and along with us, the rest of the family in the regional program, the key lessons learned, and try to really scale and replicate, all the innovative approaches, but also to overcome, what we're all experiencing right now of challenges. So thank you for that. I'll move on next to Palestine. And Palestine, Azhar, you've been working with community-based interventions, engaging men and boys since 2016, since the inception of the program. And I'm sure you've witnessed a lot of the challenges and opportunities, some that are shared by our colleagues and have been presented. Are there any distinct ones maybe attached to the context in Palestine that you can share with us? Thank you very much.
Yes, that's true. It's a very good question indeed. There are always key lessons learned from our work, especially after the end of each program or project. Lessons learned always help us to develop our work to the better. One lesson learned from phase 1 that we took in our consideration when we implemented phase 2, that it's important to work with women, to engage men and women together in our work. In the first phase, we worked only with the men who came to us and told us, please work with our wives, because they don't believe in our capacities to participate or share household works and childcare with them. So we took this lesson learned into our consideration when we developed the second program. And so we work now with couples, husband and wife, or father and mother, and also with the students, female and male students. I'm gonna mention some of the activities that we engaged women and men together. During COVID-19, we implemented, through our sub-projects, we implemented an activity called Interactive Dash. Simply, it is about a positive deviant and his wife. They have to prepare a meal together and send it to their neighbors and encourage them, neighbors, I mean husband and wife, and encourage them to prepare another meal and send it to their next neighbor, and go on. The next neighbor prepare a meal and send to the third neighbor, etc., etc. So we have like the neighborhood, all of them are working and making dishes for each other, and that was a way we disseminate the norm. A man shares his wife in housework, etc. And by the way, this interactive dish built a trust between the husband and the wife, because the wives didn't trust the capacities of their husbands. After the implementation of the dish, we followed up with them and they said, oh my God, they can do it. They got happier when they participated with them. Moving to challenges, our work is of course full of challenges. One of our biggest challenges that is working with in a conservative society, where most of the time religion is used as the base of judgment and argument, of course, to justify gender inequality. And here comes our intervention to overcome this challenge by using religion. I'm gonna tell you how. We have a story of a beneficiary called Muhammad Bakri Abu Amra, 34 years old. He's a father of 6 kids. He attended an awareness session led by a positive deviant from our work. He was not convinced that men should participate at household work. And it's a woman task for him. He justified this by Quran, and he used the verse of al-qawama to justify al-qawama or guardianship to justify his speech. And he said that men's participation with the women, it's against the traditions and against religion and Quran, etc. It was a tough argument, and it's not manly to do this. So the positive deviant who conducted the workshop called Sami Abu Amra, he refuted such an argument. Quickly, he recognized that there's a misunderstanding of the verse itself. So, being received previous capacity building trainings on such things, on how to answer and refute things and arguments like this, he gave him the correct interpretation of the verse. The beneficiary got surprised. He said, "Oh my God, it's the first time in my life I hear this interpretation. I thought that it is the guardianship. A man has a power on a woman. She has to stay at home and make the housework, and the man has the power of everything, etc., etc." And he was gradually convinced, till he frankly at the end he said, "Okay, it's not as I thought before. I changed my mind and my attitude." And he said, "Okay, I think now I can participate my wife at household works." Later, when the positive deviant Sami Abu Amra followed with his wife, because we wanted to give the feedback of his wife called Samira Abu Amra, 33 years old. She said, "Okay, this man used to make troubles for me all the time whenever I asked him to share with me. But after he attended your workshop, he changed to a new man. Whenever I ask him or even don't ask him to share, he participates. I had in the past, there was a problem always to take care of the baby. She has a newborn baby. I can't do anything in the house. Please just carry him." He refused all the time, but now he's a new man. And she said, "No more troubles about this." Also, I want to show you an example video, how we cooperated with community leaders and Mukhtars. At the beginning of the webinar, I said something about the Mukhtars, who are the like neighborhood chef. They help us a lot in disseminating our norms and to promote gender equality, with focus, of course, on men sharing household responsibility and childcare and promoting paternity leave. So Radwa already played on it. Okay, that's the last part of my speech. Thank you very much, and I hope you like this video.
المشاركة الزوجية أو مشاركة الرجال نسائهم في المنزل هذا من تعاليم الدين، فلا بد من مشاركة الزوجة في الأعمال المنزلية والرعاية الأبوية، المشاركة أيضا في رعاية الأطفال، توجيههم، وأيضا الرعاية والتوجيه والمشاركة تكون بالفعل وليس بالقول. أنا أشارك زوجتي في الأعمال المنزلية والرعاية الأبوية وأنا مع إجازة الأبوة.
Thank you, Azhar, very much. Very interesting to see and very interesting to hear. And I think the role of religious leaders and the religious dialogue cannot be stressed enough. And I think the program as a whole, and maybe there'll be another opportunity or venue where we can share the immense work that's been done with our partner Musaweh in general on the religious discourse. And there are also some very interesting knowledge products that I urge you to check on the page and see the kind of work that goes along the lines of what you just shared with us. And very quickly also, there was a very interesting camp that was held in Egypt as well, with sheikhs and priests, and it was advocating, talking about the role of the father as well, about the family, about, and it had an element also of, different kinds of information that I think was very groundbreaking for them to hear, and where you had within a venue these revered religious figures and leaders, very traditional, that come from villages from across Egypt that had never been to Cairo even, and under one roof had the chance to connect at a very human level on our shared fundamental human experiences. And that just goes to show you the approaches that we really should be using if we want to instigate change. And I think after receiving the information and having the chance to dialogue with each other, they went back to their villages, and the first thing was that on their own devices, in the Friday prayers, in their preaches, they started speaking about what it means to be an engaged father, what it means to be a positive parent, open communication, etc., from a religious standpoint. So I think this cannot be underscored enough, and thank you for sharing that.
I just want to highlight one last thing, that in phase one, we worked with imams, with religious people, with the imams in the inheritance project. They helped us very much to convince and influence people to give women their inheritance, because it's like a tradition here in the Palestinian society that men do not give inheritance to women. So by using or utilizing these religious people and their power, because we are a conservative society, they have such a power on people. Their word is listened. So we managed to achieve a large success, and many men gave inheritance to their sisters. The fathers died long time ago, but the sisters didn't manage to get their inheritance. Utilizing these positive deviants from religious peoples and imams, the imam, he's like the worship leader. They managed to get their inheritance. So I confirm that working with religious people is very, very, very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Azhar. And with that, we wrap up the 2 segments of the panel discussion. And I want to thank the speakers for that very much, and for the audience as well who have participated today. I believe we have not received direct questions for the panelists, and I'll wait for my colleague Radwa to confirm that one more time. But if that is indeed the case, then we can move ahead with the key lessons learned and recommendations. And before we do so, I want to mention again that most of the links, all the resources, everything that was referenced throughout the discussion, you will find the links to that in the chat box. The whole event today has been recorded and will be disseminated by email. It is both fortunate and unfortunate that today is Thanksgiving, so I want to wish whoever is celebrating, I want to wish them a happy Thanksgiving, but also that, we would have hoped, less people were on holiday, maybe we could can be part of the event. But yeah, I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving, and pass the floor on to Rodrigo to share with us some of the lessons learned and recommendations. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Rasha. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues and partners. Now it's the slot where we are going to reflect on lessons learned and key recommendations for policy and programming, building upon some of the points you have raised today, and some of the lessons that we have in the Men and Women for Gender Equality Regional Program. As we are now in the second phase of the program, and the program started in 2015. So we have quite of experience, knowledge, lessons learned accumulated, especially because we have undertaken quite a few number of evaluations as well. Reflecting on the theme of the panel today, which is focused on fatherhood and caregiving of men, I would like to highlight that at the moment in the program, we are piloting 3 gender transformative parenting programs in Palestine, Morocco, and Egypt, partnering with experienced local civil society organizations for the implementation of these programs on the ground, and also to engage, to mobilize facilitators for the cascade trainings of these programs. We are also partnering with Promundo, which is an international partner, to provide some technical advice for these parenting interventions in Palestine and Morocco, in 2 of the 3 countries. So I would like to start my remarks lessons learned on lessons learned and key recommendations by saying that fatherhood, the theme of this panel, is indeed a useful entry point to promote men's engagement in unpaid care and domestic work and in gender equality as well. And this is something that we have learned from images researches in the 5 countries where we have undertaken them in the region. As this research, the findings tell us that it's an entry point because men not see fatherhood as a threatening issue. And also because, as Rasha mentioned earlier, Arab men and men in the region desire more involvement with their children beyond the men's typical role of breadwinning. So building upon fatherhood is when we can work with men in the MENA region on other issues pertaining gender equality and prevention of violence against women. And as you know, there is a lot of available evidence from all over the world that tell us that dysfunctional fathers are an intergenerational driver for perpetration and victimization of GBV, gender-based violence. When children become adults, indeed. So that's why it's important to engage fathers to break this intergenerational cycle of violence and support gender equality. However, it's also important, and this is the lessons on coming up from the piloting that we are doing in these 3 countries. It's also important to engage mothers in any gender transformative fatherhood or parenting program. As we know from research, including images, that conservative and discriminatory values are transmitted and reinforced from both parents to children. Particularly in the MENA region, most women are not in the formal labor market. Only around 20% of women have a paid job in the region. So that is why women tend to have a higher time of exposure with children in the household than men have. Fatherhood programs have traditionally focused on father to children interactions. So this approach can also be expanded to be more holistic, transformative, and impactful by incorporating a focus on other interactions, such as the relationships between father and mother, mother and children, and child with child. And this is a good way of ensuring deeper transformations and to promote egalitarian and healthy relationships within the families. And ideally, if resources allow it, the gender transformative parenting or family programs would need to be coupled with targeted interventions in schools as a way of supporting sustainability and outreach with the children whose parents are participating in these programs. Another key recommendation, of course, is that we need very rigorous, thorough evaluations. As you know, in the field of working with men and boys for gender equality, there is not substantive evaluations in general. So we definitely need to have rigorous evaluations, and we need to do these evaluations after some months after completion of interventions. Because evaluations that are only based on comparison between pre and immediate post-interventions evaluations limit any claims about the longer-term impact of the programs. It's also very important that when speaking about impact and evaluating impact of these programs, we avoid focusing on men only and men self-assessment. This is something that Carine also mentioned earlier. There is a high risk if we only focus on men and asking men how do they feel, how useful the programs are, etc. We have a high risk of falling into the trap of men's self-indulgence and listening to one side only. So evaluations must always be triangulated with partners, with other family members, with other female friends, etc., that are around men targeted by these programs. It's also very important that evaluations look at the actual behaviors of individuals and not just attitudes. Most of the evaluations tend to focus on attitudes, but we also need to see to understand better about impact on behaviors. Of course, noting that to observe changes in behaviors, it is important to implement multifaceted and comprehensive interventions that require investment and time. Another recommendations is that we must also focus not only on seeking change at the level of individuals only, but also change in communities, institutions, and social systems. This is indeed, we know that everybody working on this field, this is the elephant in the room. And of course, looking beyond changes in individuals requires shifting the mainstream practice of programming and building the evidence, as well as the usual timelines of funding to programs. We need to be creative, and donors also need to understand this as well. To achieve changes at community, institutional, and societal levels, beyond the behavioral changes at the level of individuals, we need a holistic approach that is paired with a focus on women's empowerment and promotion of women's own collective consciousness. As we know from the experience of social movements, including the 3 centuries of history of the feminist movement all around the world, we need to work not only with the privileged or the oppressors, but we also need to work and to allow creating collective consciousness in the oppressed, so they can identify their own strategies as well to overcome the oppression that they are experiencing. When it comes to intersectional approaches, these are, of course, very important, and we can say that parenting programs often fall into the trap of only targeting couples formed by a father and a mother, heterosexual, etc. And definitely we need to incorporate intersectionality in these interventions. However, we need to incorporate it in a way in which we address the material conditions of subordination of people who are affected by these multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination. This also means to build alliances with these people, as Carine mentioned before, and take a stock of the voices and experiences from these people from disadvantaged groups to question, and this is very important, to question the hegemonic masculinity, to question social hierarchies and normative institutions that act as social reproduction of inequality and violence. This means that we are not incorporating intersectionality to use the inclusion of disadvantaged groups to validate or reinforce oppressive hegemonic institutions. That's very important. And it's also very important, we need to be mindful that we need to have a specific focus to address the misogynistic and sexist practices within disadvantaged groups as well. We cannot assume that men with disabilities or gay men or transgender people, for instance, are per se gender transformative or feminist. So we definitely need to work with these potential allies to develop a gender transformative approach as well. And finally, I would like to highlight that it's very important to work alongside women's organizations, of course, but also other programs and stakeholders working in other areas in order to address structural conditions of inequality. Conditions that perpetuate gender-based discriminatory social norms, such as, for example, lack of women's economic empowerment or discriminatory religious practices, etc. So we always need to bear in mind and build these alliances within programs in the same organization or with other stakeholders working on these other areas. So this is in a glimpse what I wanted to say. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. Over to Rasha.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Very interesting set of lessons and recommendations for us, as much as I'm sure for a lot of the audience that's especially on the ground and trying to instigate change in this area in particular. I want to ensure that this also will be shared along with the documentation that will be disseminated from the session today. And non-conventionally, because we didn't have a chance to welcome Susan due to the mishap with the start of the event, and I wanted to personally and on behalf of our colleagues at UN Women to welcome Susan, our regional director, who joined us last October, and we are looking forward very much to you leading us on further work in the Arab region. I'm very excited also with the reference that you made that I share in terms of being surrounded with an encouraging father, husband, brother, and son goes a long way and makes all the difference. I'm happy to hear that from you. And for those that do not know Susan, Susan has joined UN Women from the Swedish SIDA, and we're very lucky to have her on board, hopefully physically as well in Egypt with us quite soon. So this is a double welcome on my part. And Susan comes with 20 years of experience in development and humanitarian work in the Middle East, Asia, and Africa regions. And there is a wealth of experience there with also other UN organizations at a senior level, with UNICEF, with OCHA, amongst others. So that's non-conventional welcome at the wrap-up of the panel, and I appreciate in advance the closing remarks and the time you've dedicated to us, and wish you a negative PCR test once you manage to get there. So over to you, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rasha. Thank you so much, colleagues. I will be brief, but I really want to, from the very bottom of my heart, thank Amy, Carine, Hassan, and Azhar for these brilliant presentations. I have to say I'm both humbled, impressed, and inspired by what you'd all said today. Also, let me take this opportunity to reflect only, I'm not going to speak more than 1 minute, but I really want to reflect on a certain issue that I think is unique for our region. Because as Rasha was saying, I come from many other regions. I can do that comparative analysis similar to many of you. I think our region has a tremendous gap between, on one hand, where we are, the reality on the ground, and the aspirations we have. I don't think I've seen this gap as large in any other region in which I've worked. This gap I am confident that we will use it to propel our work in the area of gender equality in general, but gender violence against women, but also equality amongst boys and girls, men and women in very specific, and the issues that we discussed today. Because if you look at the research, yes, maybe 1/3 of women are subjected to violence at homes, but on the other hand, the same research will tell us that the majority of respondents don't want to see the situation continued in the coming years. So there's a difference here between what we see and where we want to be. And that gap, I think, and I'm confident, will propel us in the coming years. I've also listened to you and paid very close attention to what you said. And I'm not going to repeat what Rodrigo just alluded to, but there's definitely 100% assurance from my end that rigorous evaluations is of critical importance, because it shows us or gives us evidence to our assumptions, right? But also, what is very important is to work on innovative ways. Carine went through it, Amy, Hassan, and Azhar, all of you showed us very innovative methodologies to work both with boys, men, but also with women and girls. And lastly, that the not so usual suspects, such as the military or the religious leaders or other forms of authorities in our societies that might not be the traditional to go to when we speak of and work with gender equality are a critical pillars in terms of our continued work. With no further delay, please let me also thank, of course, Rodrigo and Rasha for excellent input throughout today's meeting. And thank you so much all for listening. And I'm hoping very much that we will see each other soon, face to face. And I'm personally looking forward working very closely with you, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, everyone. May I ask you very quickly to turn on your video cameras, if you don't mind, for a group photo? Thank you very much.
you.